A long game can provide you with an odyssey, a journey, but sometimes you don't have time for that. It's not that you don't want an odyssey, it's that you don't have an odyssey worth of time. We got you covered here at gameranx. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today, 15 of the best single-player games you can finish in 5 hours. Or less, for that matter. Because we're starting off with number 15, Portal with RTX. The original Portal that shipped with the orange box back in 2007 is still a classic. One of the all-time great puzzle games. You can finish it in just about 3 hours. It's short, but it's very sweet. And if you got a nice powerful rig, it's a great benchmark with all the new ray tracing features built in.
Unbelievable. You.
Subject name here.
Must be the pride of.
Subject hometown here.
This is just about the perfect game to add ray tracing to. The simple environments really pop with everything cranked up to the max. Even if you don't have or don't care about cutting-edge graphics, it's Portal. It's still an incredibly good game, but the ray tracing is an easy excuse to jump back into this seminal puzzle game one more time. And number 14 is Resident Evil 3. Some people honestly dislike how short Resident Evil 3 Remake is. How Long to Beat says it takes about 6 hours, but you can clear it pretty easily in under 5 hours without really trying too hard. For some, the short length is a disappointment, but for others, it's a good thing. I love the Resident Evil 2 Remake, but the Resident Evil 3 Remake is the one I find myself returning to the most, probably because of its short length. It's just a really fun experience. Yeah, Nemesis isn't quite as terrifying as Mr. X, and the game isn't as innovative overall, but its more streamlined, action-oriented gameplay makes it a smooth experience. Also, of course, it looks great. All these new Resident Evil games have been visual showcases, and this one is no exception. I do understand that some people are disappointed the remake misses some sections from the original game, and also Nemesis doesn't actually appear that often. It's probably the most flawed out of the new crop of Resident Evil games, but also, for whatever reason, I keep going back to it a lot. It's a great and short game. And number 13 is Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons. This Xbox Live indie is getting a remake soon, so that's all the more reason to talk about it in my opinion. Made by Joseph Fares, the guy who went on to make A Way Out and It Takes Two. This game's sort of the opposite of his later co-op-centric games. It's a single-player game with the gimmick that each brother is controlled by a separate stick. It takes a little getting used to, and a lot of the challenge of the game comes from trying to mentally coordinate two characters at once. It's a less polished game, and it could be a huge pain, but Brothers is also made as tightly as they come. You're moving through environments pretty quickly, no single gameplay challenge goes on for too long or feels too difficult. It's just really good. Honestly, it probably served as the blueprint for all of his later games, despite the fact that it's kind of the opposite. Somebody probably said to him, you know what'd be great is if this was two-player. It's more of an experience game than a legitimate challenge, which makes the short length work in the game's favor. It's only around 3 hours, but it's pretty fantastic the whole way through. The controls can be a source of frustration for people who struggle to mentally multitask, but once you get into the right headspace, this one is a winner. And number 12 is Alien vs. Predator. I'm cheating a little bit here because this Rebellion-made game actually takes about 8.5 to 9 hours to finish, but each individual campaign only takes about 3, so I'm just going to say it fits. It's not one of those types of games where each campaign is meant to be played in sequence or anything. They're all basically standalone games, so yeah, kind of a cheat, but whatever. But do we get to mention this one a whole lot, though? No, we don't. This game lets you play as a colonial marine, an alien, or a predator. Each campaign's completely different, and each playable character has their own mechanics and gameplay. The colonial marine is exactly what you'd expect, but the alien can do things like climb on walls and leap, and it makes them feel totally different. Predator, however, probably the most fun. Pure power fantasy. They can turn invisible, rip enemies limb from limb, blow guys up with their plasma caster. I mean, there's plenty they can do that's just crazy. You really feel like a hunter when you're playing as this one, and while I think all 3 campaigns are fun in their own right, Predator's the standout. And number 11 is Carrion, an indie game that it's the reverse of what you normally get in games. Instead of being the human fighting monsters in the secret underground lab, you're the monster trying to get out. You play as this bizarre tentacle blob of meat and teeth, basically just an amorphous horror. And you consume scientists and guards, you're able to spread corruption, become stronger. You're basically the alien crossed with eldritch horror. It's a dark pretense, but it's fantastic. Depending on your biomass, you either have to play as a stealthy mouse in a game of cat and mouse to take out captors, or if you've got a bunch of biomass, you can just go nuts. Grab people, throw them around, devour them outright. You want to stay big, but sometimes the only way you can progress is to shed some weight and become smaller, which makes you weaker and more vulnerable again. So the game mixes things up pretty regularly. Not just a pure power fantasy. Sometimes it feels like a 2D stealth game because you can die pretty quickly if you're not careful. This is really a good one. How Long to Beat says takes about 4.5 hours, which is give or take the same amount of time I spent with it. Maybe a little longer, honestly. There are some things that I intentionally took time with just because they were fun. But even at 4.5 hours, I think there's enough time to have some fun without the gimmick getting too stale or the environment getting too repetitive. This is one of the more interesting indies of the last few years, and if you haven't played it, you really should. And number 10 is Titanfall 2's campaign. Call of Duty campaigns are short. They usually run 4 to 6 hours these days, and while the most recent one is pretty weak, Modern Warfare 3, they're normally pretty decent. There's a lot of good campaigns in the series I could pick for the list. Call of Duty 4 is a classic, so is the sequel. Infinite Warfare, highly regarded as one of the best. I have a soft spot for most of the Black Ops campaigns. I mean, I've even done before you buys for some of them, if I remember right. But the best Call of Duty campaign isn't even a Call of Duty game. It's Titanfall 2. Rather than trying to be this gritty military story, Titanfall 2's campaign is all about being fun. Every level is constructed for maximum entertainment value. The game is always mixing things up and throwing in new situations and scenarios. Just a roller coaster ride from start to finish. How Long to Beat has it listed as 6 hours on average, but for me, I always end up finishing in about 4.5 hours. It's one of those games that you can take it slow, but the movement mechanics are just so fun. I'm looking for spots to wall run, backstab guys. You can't help but progress as fast as you can. Like, I'm not going to say it's like speed run fast or anything, but I'm usually finishing this thing in under 5 hours. It's a fantastically put together campaign, and it's a real shame it's never really gotten a follow-up. Like, they're the masters of the Call of Duty campaign. I mean, this is the company started by the original founders of Infinity Ward we're talking about here. It doesn't have to be Titanfall 3. Just give us an Apex campaign or something. Anything. At number 9 is Cocoon. In the world of short games, you've got your AAA hyper-focus and tested cinematic single-player modes, and then you got your quiet, contemplative indies. Cocoon, definitely the latter, and one of the best indie puzzlers from 2023. Made by one of the guys behind Inside and Limbo, Cocoon isn't quite as deadly as those games, but it's just about as mysterious. It's one of those games that drops you into an alien world, tells you to figure it all out, and have to challenge trying to figure out the rules of the place you're in. It's a game with an almost Myst-like vibe, where you're basically just wandering around solving puzzles with little to no direction. But it works really well in this game's case, because the world in itself is just incredibly intriguing. This is a game where going into it knowing as little as possible is the best way to experience. So it's good that there's not that much of a commitment here in terms of time. Only about 5 hours is what it'll take to finish this thing. So, I mean, it's one of those games that sticks in your mind way longer than its short runtime. And number 8 is Vanquish. Ever wonder what Bayonetta would look like as a third-person shooter? Well, that's basically Vanquish, and it's fun as hell. Back in the Xbox 360 era, third-person shooters were synonymous with slow plotting gameplay. You'd slowly trudge up to cover, remain completely still, hide from the enemies, maybe pop out to fire a shot or two, but otherwise you just sat there. I mean, I'm not being completely fair about those games, but that was the impression a lot of people had. So when Vanquish came out, it was like a revelation. It's a third-person shooter with cover, but instead of sitting around like a chump, you're rocket boosting all over the place, flipping around, zipping all over the battlefield. It's fast and chaotic, and it's honestly sometimes a little hard to keep track of what's going on. The game's extremely interesting because all of Platinum's action game sensibilities bleed into it, like giving you a scorecard after every enemy encounter, the way the game constantly throws new enemies and bosses at you. It's not perfect. There's probably a little too many cutscenes, and they break up the pacing a little too much, but honestly, you can skip most of them, and it really wouldn't matter. Even if you're watching everything and attempting to follow along with the story, this is a game that can be beaten in under 6 hours. How long to beat? List the average playtime as about 6 hours, but like Titanfall, it's one of those games where if I'm not rushing forward, it feels like I'm doing something wrong. And I always end up beating it in 5 hours or less. This game came out at a weird time when Japanese devs were trying to appear to a Western market, and usually those games ended up being kind of crap, but Vanquish is not. It is the exact opposite. It's so cracked out and crazy, it still holds up today. And number 7 is Furi. The indie action game is unique as it is difficult. It takes a classic boss rush type action game popularized by games like Gunslinger Heroes and Alien Soldier, turns it into a 3D action game that inexplicably has bullet hell elements. The plot here is simple. You're the stranger or the writer, I don't really know, the game calls you both, and you're fighting through 10 guardians to do something. I don't really know. That's the plot, doesn't matter. Only thing that does matter is these crazy boss battles, and they are fantastically designed all around. It's a game that can be completed in way less than 5 hours, but actually beating some of the bosses is what makes the whole thing take longer. Some of the fights are no joke, and certain parts of the game feel like brutal difficulty spikes if you're not mentally prepared for what the game is going to throw at you next. If you're the type who loves a good boss fight, Furi has some of the best out there. And number 6 is Call of Juarez Gunslinger, only about 5 hours average. And you'd think this Call of Juarez spinoff would feel pretty slight with that runtime, but this game manages to pack a lot of game in how short it is. What makes it unique is the framing device. It's a story being told at a saloon, so the whole thing is larger than life and exaggerated. This doesn't just play into the story, it actually affects everything about the game in really clever ways. Like, you can literally dodge bullets when you're about to die, shooting feels powerful, you're basically a walking tank who's surprisingly fast. Every level mostly consists of blowing away enemies by the dozens with very little effort. Sounds brainless, but it's very entertaining. It's done in a way that goes well above and beyond what it sounds like. The environment changes on the fly when the narrator realizes he remembers something wrong or said something that doesn't work, which can be annoying, but it's actually a pretty solid mechanic given the pretty solid writing. The game also has one of the best quick draw minigames I've ever seen. It's tense without being annoying. It's not long, but it's extremely fun, and it's one of those games that's really easy to return to. Works perfectly on the PC still, which is not the case from games from 2013.
He's in town somewhere. Me and the kid shared a certain similarity in build and coloring. I was just glad I had Deputy Bob's mean-ass shotgun.
And number 5 is Inside. The follow-up to Limbo is a masterclass in mystery and mood. The cinematic adventure game immediately throws you in the middle of this bizarre scenario that's never explained. It only gets more bizarre and confusing by the time the end credits hit. It's probably one of the most disorienting action-adventure games of all time. You start out as a kid in the woods, and suddenly people are shooting at you, dogs are chasing you, there's mind-controlled humans, a giant research facility. It's a wild experience that's aggressively alienating. It's like they're daring us to understand what's going on or even what we're supposed to be doing. Good thing actually playing the game is so fun. All you can do is run, jump, and grab stuff, but the game manages to throw you in all kinds of crazy situations that are either really dangerous or just mysterious, and it's so masterfully paced. There's never any time spent on any one thing, and you're always moving forward. This one only takes about 3.5 hours, which isn't super long, but it's one of the most memorable games I've ever played. A certain segment is just seared into my memory at this point. If you played this game also, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And number 4 is Mirror's Edge. This first-person parkour game by DICE and EA is unusual for a lot of reasons. For one thing, it's an FPS game from 2008 where you don't have to shoot anything. It's got a super unique art style that still looks great today. I would say if you took inspiration from Mirror's Edge and pulled it back just a bit, you get the art style from the finals. And oh yeah, it's also really short. How long to beat puts the playtime for this game at 6 hours, but that seems pretty generous. If you're just playing the campaign, you can really get in at like 2.5, 3 hours. Single setting. Normally that would be a complaint, but for this game it really isn't. The parkour controls are excellent. The environments are beautifully designed, varied, really just like balanced in a way that a lot of the time level design really just isn't. It's another one of those games that really encourages speedy play. The story of the game is that you're a runner in the city, so like you should run through this city. It's one of those games I've played through multiple times because yeah, it's really short and also moving around is really satisfying. It's a game you can finish in an afternoon and it's still great. And number 3 is Little Nightmares and Little Nightmares 2. I don't know what it is about these games that stand out so much, but as far as short games go, these are some of my favorites. The first one can be finished in about 3.5 hours, and the sequel is a couple hours longer, but they're both short enough to qualify for this list, and honestly, I like them both just about equally, so let's mention them both, right? Like Inside, these games throw you into a disorientingly weird world where something as simple as, what are you even doing, is in question, and death comes fast and often. Everything wants you dead in these games, and you're gonna get killed a lot, but the checkpoints are pretty plentiful, and death is usually only a few seconds of a setback, so you're usually making progress. The monster designs are just fantastic in here. They're grotesque, and every encounter with them is scary, fun, and exciting, and the game is always about giving you something new to do. It's never really terrifying or anything, it's not Amnesia Dark Descent, but these games manage to be really creepy with their themes and ideas, and I like that better, honestly. Not that Amnesia Dark Descent isn't fantastic, I just kind of like the style of this type of thing more. And number 2 is Superliminal, an indie puzzle game you don't have to worry about getting horribly murdered in, which is, interesting. But Superliminal is less of a game and more a series of optical illusions, but damn if they're not impressive. That's the game's entire gimmick. It's about seeing things from a different perspective, literally. Depending how you look at something, it can completely remake the environment. In some ways, it's more of a tech demo than a full game idea, so it makes sense that it's short. It only takes about 2.5 hours to finish, but that's the perfect length for an experience like this. Any longer and the tricks might start getting a bit old, but this game manages to consistently wow you the whole way.
During eyelids, you will lose the ability to awaken suddenly due to realizing that this is a dream. Evidence: I have already informed you that this is a dream. You did not wake up. Please complete the remaining orientation activities.
And finally, at number 1, it's Sayonara Wild Hearts. An extremely short rhythm game that can be beaten in just an hour and a half, which makes it easy to dismiss as a little throwaway game, but there's a reason so many people praised it back when it came out in 2019. It's a short game, but it's fantastic. There's an actual honest-to-goodness story here, but like a lot of the games on this list, it's kind of nonsense. Like everything from the visuals to the music, this is a game about vibes rather than anything specific, a mood piece, and it pulls that off very, very well. The music is fantastic, the gameplay deceptively simple, but they're pretty inventive about it, and it's satisfying as hell as a result. A lot of games have tried to be these audiovisual music experiences, but few have really pulled it off. There's Rez, there's this game, and probably something else I'm forgetting about, but off the top of my head, not a lot. Either way, this is one of the best and highly recommended. I have a couple of bonuses for you. There's a lot of short games, so here's a lightning round. Just going to quickly touch on a few that I don't have a lot to say, but it would feel incomplete without mentioning them. First off, Metal Gear Solid Rising Revengeance. Duh. This one's slightly too long to just plop on this list like it's nothing, but it's short and it's absolutely amazing. The combat's so smooth and satisfying, the boss fights are legendary, and everything about it is utterly bonkers in the best way. Next, Katana Zero, basically Hotline Miami, but a side-scroller with a slightly more coherent plot. Katana Zero is so much fun. The story is legitimately intriguing too. About 4.5 hours on average to beat. The instant replay at the end of each section is brilliant, and watching back what you did at full speed, it's satisfying. Next is Ruiner. Takes about 5.5 hours. Top-down 3D action game that doesn't get a lot of love, but I think it deserves it. It's basically Cyberpunk Hotline Miami, but it's a little more forgiving than that and actually plays out pretty differently. It's also an awesome looking game in general. Beautiful, ton of fun to play. Next is Sonic Mania, 5.5 hours. Short, fast games. How can you not mention Sonic? All his classic games can be finished in just a few hours, but honestly, my personal favorite is probably the most recent in the fully 2D Sonic canon. Sonic Mania is just awesome. It's a game that just really understands what makes Sonic games fun, which is not just the physics, it's also the incredible level design, and Sonic Superstars is good and a big step for Sega to internally create something that works nearly that good, but the Sonic fans just get it better still. Next is Slay the Princess, 3-hour average. Take the Stanley Parable, turn it into Choose Your Own Adventure, got Slay the Princess, a weird and intriguing game from late 2023 that doesn't have a lot going on in terms of visuals, but is one of the most interesting games of the year just because of the quality of the writing. And finally, Pizza Tower, 6.5 hours average, 4.5 rushed. It's Sonic mixed with Wario, and it's completely bizarre and fun to play. It might seem basic at first, but what really surprised me is the very level themes and unique power-ups. Genuinely, it gives you something new almost every level, and it's that variety that makes it work. That and the music, which is fantastic. And that's all for today. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription, so click subscribe. Don't forget to enable notifications, and as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at Falcon the Hero. We'll see you next time right here on Game Ranks.